Nigel, what's up, man? He says, hey, good day, gents. Hope all of you are doing awesome and had an amazing holiday so far. My question today is on Google Knowledge Panel. How can you use mgyb.co and semantic mastery techniques to achieve a Google Knowledge Panel? In other words, what services or steps should be performed or purchased to achieve getting a knowledge panel if possible? Well, a knowledge panel is about, for a knowledge panel to pop for a brand search, it just means you have to have strengthened the entity enough for Google to recognize it. Does that make sense? So the entity has to become an authority, has to be recognized and become enough of an authority, which generally that's not that hard to do for a brand search. Where it's hard to do is if the brand name is a generic keyword. So for example, I've done some training recently on a location that I set up called Lynchburg Tree Service. Well, that's a generic, I mean, that's the brand name of the location, but it's just a generic search term. It's city plus tree service, right? So that's much harder to get a knowledge panel to pop. It's not that it can't be done, but it's a much heavier lift, right? To do that than it is like if you had a unique name. Like if I did Benner's Tree Service Lynchburg or something, right? That would be a much more unique name that would be much easier to pop a knowledge panel for it, because I could establish an entity of that, for that brand name, and it would vary because there's probably not any others competing for that. Google would recognize it as an entity, and it could, after a certain threshold has been met, a knowledge panel will pop for that. So like I said, it's generally about the more you can strengthen an entity, there's a number of ways to do that. What we teach, which is about going out and getting, expanding your entity footprint. In other words, getting a profile and a presence on as many different assets out on the web as you can, interlinking those assets, which is incredibly important because that creates the associations between those nodes, so to speak, right? And Google creates this knowledge graph for that term or the brand or the entity and all of its nodes connected. So like that's another way to do it. That's why syndication networks are still valuable. Even if we're not really syndicating, they're still valuable because again, it's about the entity footprint. Same thing with the Google Sites, Drive Stacks, all of those, any Google properties, the Google My Business, the Google Business Profile, all of those things, YouTube, any sort of Google properties that you can add to that, entity footprint is really going to help. Anything high authority period is going to help. All of that. And then it's about, structured data, guys, using schema properly is going to make a huge difference. So, again, popping a knowledge panel for an entity or a brand or a cert, typically, as long as it's not a generic keyword, which is very difficult to be recognized as an entity. It's not that it can't be done, but it's very difficult. So as long as you have a kind of a unique name or, something that's, it doesn't have to be entirely unique, but it has to be, and then you have to build the entity assets and make all those connections and associations, get published in a lot of places. Press releases help with that kind of stuff. Social media accounts help with that kind of stuff. Web 2s, Google properties, citations, if it's local business, citations are a big part of that. Getting submitted to local data aggregators. That's another big thing. Voice search now, right? So Google, Alexa, all those types of voice search engines, which there's a number of them now, having a presence there. Like all of those things are really going to help. YouTube, once again, YouTube. Guys, YouTube's a big thing, right? Just having a YouTube channel and connecting all of your assets in the about page. And then also publishing YouTube videos with NAP and, name, address, and phone number, link back to the site, all that kind of stuff. All those things are going to help. So, creating a knowledge panel is about having an entity established that Google has determined is enough authority that it will create that knowledge panel for you, right? Hopefully that helps. There's a provider on, if you guys have ever tried to create a page on wikidata.org, I've tried a number of times, and every single time my pages have been deleted. They've been moderated out. There's a provider on Legit that does Wikidata pages for $30. And I've just gotten a couple of them. They're not even 2 weeks old yet, but they're still live. Every time I've ever tried to do a wikidata.org page for any one of the GMB locations or brands or clients or anything, within 3 days, they're deleted. They've been flagged for deletion. But I've got, got one that I just got back, I don't know, a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago now, from a provider on Legit, and it's still live. I just checked it yesterday. So like I mentioned in my review of that service, that if it sticks, which I'm going to give it a couple more weeks, but if it sticks, I'm going to be buying a lot of them from this provider, because that's another great way. Wikidata is a semantic database. So if you can get a company page published on Wikidata that sticks, that's a big one too. That'll help to pop a knowledge panel too. That's one additional component that you can add. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense.